You're listening to Kentucky Running, presented by John's Run Walk Shop in Lexington. Help others find this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing in your podcast app. This episode is sponsored by Currex Insoles.
Hey runners, thanks for tuning in. I'm Matt Reno. You know, when I'm in the store working with customers, a lot of them say to me, almost apologetically, "Oh, I don't have normal feet." And my response to that is, don't worry, there's no such thing as normal feet. It's true, we all have different shaped feet, different arch types, one foot bigger than the other, toes going in different directions. Let's be honest, the foot is a weird body part. So there is no need to feel self-conscious about your feet. But you do need to be aware that all these differences in our feet can cause a range of issues that can lead to foot-related pain or discomfort. You might overpronate or oversupinate. You might have heel spurs or bunions. You might just feel really sore in your arches at the end of the day. These things are common, and at John's Run Walk Shop, it's our job to help alleviate that pain. Now, of course, getting the right pair of shoes is essential. That's why we do our whole fit process. But as we'll discuss today, shoes are only part of the solution. For a lot of people, accommodating those various foot-related issues also requires insoles. My guest today is John Mascari, Regional Sales Manager Midwest of Currex and PowerStep. And we're going to talk about how insoles can benefit you and your feet, whether you're running, walking, standing at work all day, whatever it is you use your feet for. We've got some helpful info in this episode. A common question we get at the shop is, why do I need insoles? Are the shoes not good enough? That's a fair question. And we will get into that along with lots of other information about the advantages of insoles. And that all starts right now. John, thanks a lot for being on Kentucky Running. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to talking all things running, insoles, and anything else.
We brought Currex in last year, and I've been enjoying the product. A lot of our customers have tried them on and really enjoyed them. So let's talk about those, but also just want to talk about general foot health and tips that everyone can take away from this conversation. Let's talk about the history of Currex. How did it start? When did it start? And what need was it trying to serve that wasn't being addressed at the time?
With Currex coming into run specialty, there was never a product that would necessarily customize the shoe to your liking. Granted, there was, orthotics, insoles that just kind of offer as a helping hand, but maybe not customized for performance. So our timeline began in 2008, where we kind of created the foot disc, where you would step on it. It does a thermal impression of your arch, kind of like what you do in your store to fit people for insoles. That's where it all began, just having a device that can essentially show your feet and what you might need for your support. And then with the foot disc came the insoles, and then we provided just different activity, different sports. We did launch the Support STP insole, which is kind of our relief and comfort line back in 2020. COVID, not necessarily the best time to launch an insole, but more so we just kind of evolved throughout the couple of years of just getting insoles into people's shoes. So that's kind of where it all began. And then since then we have running, walking, cleats, hiking, pickleball, tennis. So a lot has changed throughout the years, but we're making sure that we take our time creating the insole. We don't just want to create an insole just to create it. We want to make sure it's actually activity specific.
So what are some common foot health problems that proper insoles can address or even help prevent?
Yeah, so my biggest struggle in college was shin splints.
Mm-hmm.
I never had much joint pain anywhere else, but it was mostly the shins. And there were times where I would wear a highly expensive orthotic. It definitely had its place. It definitely had its space for what you need to do, but it was a little too rigid, a little too firm for my feet. So interestingly enough, back in college, I was introduced to Currex. So it's kind of a full circle moment because now I'm representing the brand. But Currex is an insole that's designed to move. So it will offer support similar to an orthotic, but more so it's going to have a little bit of flexibility. Certain injuries like that, plantar fasciitis, shin splints, Achilles tendinosis, tendinitis, something that just can help alleviate some of that pain, give you a little bit of relief, and overall just complement the shoe. That's what we want with Currex.
Plantar fasciitis is probably the biggest one that we see people coming in and say either they know they have it or they're saying they have pain in their arches on the bottom of their feet, especially when they wake up in the morning. It just hurts when they stand up. So that's an easy recommendation for insoles. But is it worth wearing insoles if you don't have any current foot issues?
Absolutely. We treat shoes as if they're the main entree, and then with good socks and good insoles, they're great side dishes. So they're going to complement the entree. So with insoles, with Currex, they're treated as a performance prevention tool. So you definitely don't have to have the insole in your shoe, but more so if you're on your feet, if you're a worker, stander, runner, you're doing a lot of exercises, just having that extra tool in your shoe can really benefit you in the long haul. It's going to help reduce fatigue. If we're reducing fatigue, we're going to increase performance. So we want to keep you healthy and happy, and having an insole in the shoe will go a long way. Just like a good sock. A good sock, it's going to prevent blisters. We want an insole that's going to prevent shin splints, plantar fasciitis, all that bad stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. One question I've heard many times is, why don't the shoe companies just make better insoles for the shoes? And that's a totally fair question. Like, why don't they? Why do they just put the bare minimum thing in there and make you get another product like a Currex? The answer I give is that our feet are so different. You know, people say, I don't have normal feet. And I was like, nobody does. There's no such thing. All our feet are different. And so the shoe companies, if they were going to try to make insoles that catered to the needs of every specific foot type, they would just have way too many models of shoes, and it would be a completely unsustainable business model. So that's why they have to put something that appeals to the general population, and then it's up to people to find the insole that works for them. So is that kind of the answer that you give?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, when you're fitting insoles, specifically Currex, a lot of people say, well, is the shoe not good enough? And the shoe is good enough, but the insole is just going to make the fit a little bit better. I think of one of my go-to running shoes right now is the Saucony Ride. And if it came in 3 arch profiles, just like Currex, it would just make things a little difficult. The selling point would be tough, and not having much of that flexibility in the shoe would really benefit you a whole lot compared to a more custom insole like Currex.
Yeah, it would be really tough on us to have like the Saucony Ride version 18.1.2.3.
Yep.
There wouldn't be much space on the wall.
A lot of SKUs
shoes.
you got to get. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good answer. And it makes sense to a lot of people when we explain that. And another thing I say is it's worth trying on the insoles, whether it's Currex or Power Step. It's not for everybody. Some people are like, oh, I think I like it a little better without. And that's totally all right. I just think it's always worth trying, because there've been plenty of people who try them on like, oh, wow, I didn't know I needed that. It feels great. And then, they end up getting them. One thing I like about Currex is the 3 arch profiles. So with all the sizes, they also come in a low, medium, and high. So there's a little more variation with Currex. Do you find that helps serve a larger swath of the population?
Yeah, absolutely. When people come to a specialty store like John's Run Walk, they're going in with typically not a whole lot of knowledge about the right footwear to get into. They're coming in to see experts. So if you just introduce a product and just show them like, hey, this could benefit you for the long haul, they're more than likely going to buy it and put it in their everyday shoes or running shoes. But Currex really is the most customized over-the-counter insole in the world, specifically because it comes in 3 arch profiles. So high arches, medium arches, low arches. And it's pretty cool as you go down in profile. So if you go from a high to a medium to a low, our dynamic arch technology actually increases in rigidity. So you're getting the right amount of support for your feet. And then also the shank, our dynamic arch technology, increases in length. So if you're going from a size small to a medium to a large, the shank increases in length and increases in rigidity. So you're getting the right amount of support for your feet. It wouldn't be fair for someone that wears a size 14 to have a size 6 shank to their arch. So we want to make it highly customized without it feeling like molded to your feet, and it won't feel remotely orthotic either.
Yeah, that's true. They're pretty thin and they don't take up a ton of space, but they get the job done. The ones that we sell, there are different Currex too. So some are geared more toward court sports like tennis or pickleball. Some are geared more toward like soccer. The Lexington Sporting Club uses Currex in their cleats. So here we sell the Run Pro, which is a little bit more geared toward running. And one thing I should point out is the moisture control of Currex. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have a bamboo layer in our insole that offers kind of like a sock moisture wicking material to it. So if you're sweating, running, it's going to wick away just like a comfortable CEP sock or a feature sock you guys have in your stores. In fact, You get done with a run, you can take the insole out. It shouldn't be soaking wet. In fact, you can even put it in a different shoe, interchange it. The wicking abilities in the insoles are top tier. It's just a wonderful factor. You want to run in a sock. I prefer a sock when I run, but with Currex, you technically could get away without even wearing a sock if you wanted to.
What is the difference between Currex insoles and the standard over-the-counter options that you could get at like a Walgreens or something?
So Currex is highly customized, German engineered. So our insoles were studied by sports scientists. We took movement patterns, biomechanics into consideration when we built all of these insoles out. In 2018, we actually became the lead insole in run with Currex Run Pro. But since then, we've actually expanded to many different sports. So we're not just categorized just to running. We have several insoles that can be used for different activities. You mentioned the cleat specific insole, Cleat Pro. We have Golf Pro. We have a pickleball insole now. So the fact that Currex just has so many custom activity insoles just makes it completely different than your standard over-counter insole that you'd get at CVS. So our insoles are developed to the focus on the needs of the sport and athlete. So we want to make sure that if you're playing soccer, you're not playing soccer in the running insole, you're playing in the cleat insole because you're moving your feet differently in the run versus the cleat or the golf or the pickleball. So highly customized for that activity.
Awesome. That's really smart. What kind of feedback have you received from customers about how Currex insoles have improved their athletic performance or just daily comfort?
So we actually do a lot of soccer tournaments. USL, we have a partnership with them. These kids will come into our booth and they're, anywhere between 10 and 15, and they're just dealing with an enormous amount of joint pain, discomfort, plantar fasciitis, shin splints, like we talked about. And we're like, man, you guys are too young to be dealing with these injuries. I mean, I'm in my 30s now. I have joint pain, back pain, all this and that, but I don't remember being injured specifically when I was that young. So just fitting insoles and just showing the product like, hey, this is something that's going to reduce some of that stress and fatigue you're dealing with. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, just like, oh, you take the sock liner out, put more of that custom insole in. It's going to benefit you than what comes in the shoe or the cleat.
Any misconceptions about insoles you want to address?
I think a lot of people, just through my time fitting people, working expos or, doing a fitting, a lot of people just say, I don't need this. My doctor tells me, insoles you don't need if you're not hurt. So I think that's something that people say, I don't know if I really want this in my shoe, but then you pull it, you talk about it. And at least half the battle is burning out the product and letting them try it on. We have younger athletes that wear this all the time. We actually have multiple athletes that are big ambassadors of the sport with Currex, but more so just introducing it. Insoles can get a bad rap just because they think they don't need it, but also you don't really need much other than food, air, and water. So you technically don't need a running shoe.
Hey, careful. Don't say that.
Well, my boss always said you could run in bowling shoes, but it's not going to benefit you. So
Right.
having a specific shoe for that activity is going to benefit in long haul. So same with an insole.
Yeah, absolutely. They're definitely worth trying on. Even if you decide not to get them, just try them on, see how it feels. We've also had a lot of people, at least in my experience, people come in with buyer's remorse about custom orthotics because those are very expensive and sometimes they work just fine. But other people have said, oh, I wish I didn't spend the $400 or whatever on the customs when these ready-made products work just fine. Do you hear that a lot?
Yeah, especially working at athletic like expos or soccer tournaments, a lot of parents who travel with their kids, that let alone is expensive. And then they go to a doctor and they're telling them they need to spend $400, $500 on an orthotic that may or may not work. Just through my history of running in college, I've been in orthotic and it helped my shin pain, but it made my feet hurt. So you kind of have to pick the poison, which pain that you'd rather prefer. But Currex being over the counter, $54.95 for an insole that lasts over 2 pairs of shoes, I think that's pretty good. Or if you come back in and get a new shoe, you don't have to get a new insole with every fitting that you do.
Yeah, and I'm not saying custom orthotics are terrible and that you shouldn't listen to your doctor, but probably a better starting point to pay that $54.95 before you go into hundreds of dollars. Just see if the over-the-counter option works and go from there. Typical lifespan of a Currex insole, about 2 pairs of shoes, correct?
2 pairs of shoes, with the cleat specific insole. I know the focus is run, obviously with you guys, but cleat, you'll get about a whole season out of it. And I say with run, depending how often you're running, if you're running 120 miles a week, then obviously the shoes are going to wear down pretty quick. as well as the insoles or the socks. So 6 to 8 months is a typical good time to switch out. Now, if you're running just a few times a week, you might get 10 months out of it, but 2 pairs of shoes is a good indication to kind of switch out. Just like shoes, I think you guys preach maybe 4 to 6 months is a good time to maybe switch your shoes out. I'm sure you get a lot of customers that come in and say, I've been in these for 2 years, they should have lasted longer, but that's usually not the case.
I've seen more than 2 years sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They come in and the shoe's opening up. I can see their toes on the end.
Yeah.
That's way past time to get new ones. What are some of the signs that you should look for that your insoles are breaking down?
A good indication is if the top layer of the insole kind of loses its color. If you have the high profile blue and if it's just looking a little green, kind of faded, that's a good indication to switch out. It just doesn't feel like there's much to that arch anymore. That's a good indication to switch out. We definitely want you to switch out before you develop any aches and pains. Obviously, Currex is a great prevention tool of what we talked about, but like a good shoe, you want to make sure that you're switching out before anything bad happens. So I typically write on the insole when I got it, when I started, and then I just kind of in my head like, okay, I've had this for 4 to 6 months now. It's probably a good time to switch out.
That's smart.
I mean, now there's like Strava or Garmin. You can upload your footwear or your accessories and such. So I think keeping track of it can go a long way.
Well, John, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and definitely appreciate Currex for sponsoring Kentucky Running. You guys have helped us sound a little better than we would have otherwise. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Thanks to John for coming on the show and talking about the benefits of insoles. Next time you're at John's Run Walk Shop, getting a new pair of shoes, try on some Power Step or Currex. Just see how they feel and if they're right for you. They're not for everybody, but they are for a lot of people, even those who don't have foot pain or discomfort that they're trying to address. A lot of people buy them just because it makes the shoes feel more comfortable. You can learn more at johnsrunwalkshop.com/insoles. My name is Matt Reno. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon on Kentucky Running.